So a question I often get from a lot of you guys, as well as just what I see on general Bulls social media pages, is should the Bulls go all in this season in trying to contend for a championship? Should they make a very aggressive move prior to the trade deadline that would put them over the top? Because there are, of course, a lot of NBA fans who subscribe to this championship or bust mentality, which for the record, I do not subscribe to, because I think there is something to be said about actually having a fun, entertaining, and competitive team, even if they don't win a championship. For example, I will take the D Rose era Bulls any day of the week over trying to tank and hit on a potential franchise player and basically having numerous down years in the hopes of building a championship team at a later time. It's one of the biggest criticisms by the national media, which you should always take with a grain of salt, but it was one of the biggest criticisms of the Bulls this season, in that they kind of went all in giving DeRozan and Lonzo Ball big contracts, all but to be a mediocre team and maybe make the playoffs, which of course isn't the case at all. It's why we still clown the media for claiming this to be one of the worst offseason transactions, that being of DeMar DeRozan anyway. But in any event, as great as this Bulls team is, and they have certainly exceeded expectations thus far, including my own, I don't think we can say with confidence that this team is going to win a championship, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But in today's video, we're going to be discussing what the Bulls would need to do to truly go all in, where you would consider them legitimate title contenders. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I want to start with what I just mentioned, the fact that if we're being honest with ourselves, we could see this Bulls team, as currently constructed, could we see them winning the title? As good as they are, without some more size, depth in the front court, they simply will not be able to take out the likes of Giannis and Chris Middleton in a 7-game series. They will not match up well against the likes of Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, if he ever plays in another NBA basketball game. And even with the Bulls playing well against the Nets and winning their first 2 matchups in the regular season, well, the regular season is a completely different animal than the playoffs. I don't think I need to prove to anyone this point, other than referencing when the Bulls swept the Big Three Heat 4-0 in the 2011 regular season, all but to lose to them in 5 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. The fact of the matter is, this Nets team are also a much bigger team than the Bulls are. On top of that, we haven't even mentioned the middle of the pack East teams like the Hawks, who have Clint Capella, John Collins, Danilo Gallinari. Look, I'm not saying it can't be done. Obviously, small ball has worked for some teams, most notably the Warriors, but this Bulls team will struggle in a 7-game series against these teams with the likes of just Nikola Vucevic and Tony Bradley. And to be honest, that's kind of it if you want to talk about quote-unquote big man, because Simonovic doesn't look like he's even close to being NBA ready. So it's a problem. I don't think it's a massive problem, and I think the Bulls will still be able to do well this season, as they have been, and will even make some noise in the playoffs, and I wouldn't be shocked if they even made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but that's kind of their ceiling. I know some of you would disagree with that, but it's unlikely that they could make it out of the East with the current roster. Now, before I talk about what going all in for the Bulls would look like, I do want to add that I personally, as I mentioned before, don't subscribe to this idea of going all in unless you're getting a deal that is just simply too good to pass up. Because the fact of the matter is, you have all of these guys, meaning the main guys, the starting lineup, including Alex Caruso as well. They're going to be under contract for the foreseeable future, with the exception of Zach Lavine, who I believe they will agree to an extension this offseason. And I may have to make a separate video about that topic, talking about the cap space for this upcoming season and how they'll be able to afford Zach with all the other contracts they have. But the point is, the Bulls don't need to go all in this season. They have a good team. They have a good thing going with the team chemistry and culture that they've been able to establish. They can ride this wave and see where the offseason and next season takes them by making even further moves. So just a disclaimer, I personally don't think the Bulls should make an all-in move. But there have been a number of reports that have come out recently over the last couple of days, which isn't a shock because there isn't much going on with the Bulls right now, with the games being postponed. And I'm sure most of you saw the tweet from Daniel Greenberg in which he noted that according to HP Basketball, the Bulls are planning to be buyers at the trade deadline. Although the report did indicate that they were looking to make a trade for a wing defender, which doesn't really make a ton of sense to me, given the Bulls kind of already have too many wings as it is, and both Derrick Jones Jr. and even Troy Brown Jr. are decent wing defenders. But to be honest, I don't really believe any rumors or reports until I see it happen, because we all know this Bulls front office likes to keep things under wraps. But I do suspect that they will be buyers, and of course, when a report comes out like this, everyone speculates and theorizes that it's going to be for a big piece. So what does all in look like for this Bulls team? Like, they have two elite scorers in Zach Lavine and DeMar DeRozan. They have Nikola Vucevic, who I believe is still an elite scorer despite his current slump. Like, we all know, he can easily average over 20 points per game if he can get back to his normal self. They have Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, who are both incredible defenders, can run the floor, pass, and play make for others, but are also outside shooting threats. And then, of course, you have a solid bench with some depth, especially in the backcourt with the likes of Dosunmu, Kobe White. Where the Bulls really lack, and again, this isn't news to anyone, is in the front court, more specifically in the power forward role, because really you have a starting center in Vucevic and a backup five in Tony Bradley. Now, people talk about all of these players who have been involved in trade rumors recently, somewhere it's even been made clear that they are actually available in trades from their own teams, like we learned from the Pacers with Sabonis and Miles Turner, and more recently even the Blazers with Robert Covington and Yusuf Nurkic. Then, of course, you have players like Christian Wood, Jeremy Grant, Marvin Bagley, among others, who all kind of fit this need that the Bulls have. Not all fitting equally well, of course, but they're all bigs who can play a productive role on the Bulls. Now, with the Bulls, quote-unquote, going all in, trying to push for a title this season, you're going to have to trade a decent amount to get there, which, to be honest, the Bulls likely don't have the assets to even make that possible, especially if you don't want to include Patrick Williams. So in order to make that all-in push, you're going to have to give up some assets for your future. Again, this is a risk of going all in, is that you need to sacrifice your future in order to win now, and you hope that it pays off. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But here is what I personally think would be an all-in move that the Bulls could make, where I would legitimately see them as title contenders and where I could honestly say, yes, I can see this team winning a championship this season. Now, it's going to be two transactions, one of which is a trade that would be made prior to the deadline, and the other would be a buyout free agent pickup after the deadline. And that would involve the Bulls trading for Christian Wood and picking up Kevin Love off of the buyout market. Now, I know some will react and will start commenting right now before finishing the video, but let me explain how this would work and the mechanics behind it. So let me start with the trade for Christian Wood. Now, the thing that I like about Christian Wood over, say, some of the other guys that are often talked about, like Jeremy Grant or Miles Turner, is that not only does he fit the best with the Bulls in terms of his size and skill set, but he's also on the most team-friendly contract. Wood is getting paid $13.6 million this season. The following season, he's getting paid $14.3 million before his contract expires. So with a contract like that, you can still make the numbers work going into the offseason and still being able to afford a max contract for Zach Lavine. Miles Turner, on the other hand, will be making $18 million this year and next, and then Jeremy Grant is making over $20 million between this year and next. All three of them will be under contract through next season, which kind of fits with the Bulls' timeline given Vucevic's contract will also be expiring at that time. The other thing I like about Christian Wood over the other two is that he's by far the better rebounder. He's averaging a little over 11 rebounds per game, which is 7th in the entire league right now. He's not as accomplished as a scorer as someone like Jeremy Grant, but he can give you solid scoring on good efficiency, currently averaging 16.5 points per game on 45% shooting, and he's even a decent three-point shooter, which gives the Bulls another floor spacer. Now, Wood isn't the defender or rim protector that, say, Miles Turner is, but he's not that bad on defense by any means either. He guards the paint pretty well, blocks shots at a decent rate, and can get crafty in poking the ball away for a steal. Now, would Christian Wood be able to put up that kind of numbers on a good team like the Bulls versus what we can see him do on one of the worst teams in the league in the Houston Rockets? Probably not, especially because he's not going to get as many shot attempts on the Bulls. But for me, I'm more focused on what Wood can be doing and being that interior presence who can help rebound, score when needed, and protect the rim. So, what would the Bulls have to trade for him? Well, that's the challenge, because the thing is, Christian Wood's trade value is very high for a couple of reasons. One being that he's a great player, also the fact that he's a uniquely gifted big man who can move well, is athletic, can shoot from outside, and crash the boards. Those are skill sets that are highly coveted in this league. But the other reason his trade value is high is because his contract is so friendly. A guy that can give you that kind of production on 13 to 14 million a year, and he's only 26 years old in his prime, yeah, teams are going to be going after him, especially because the Rockets are in rebuild mode, and quite frankly, the Rockets might not even be willing to give him up, so you're going to have to make it a very enticing offer for him. So I know some people aren't going to like this, and to be honest, even myself, I don't know if I'm all for this because it means moving on from Patrick Williams. For the Houston Rockets, if you're going to be moving on from Christian Wood, they're going to look for young pieces and draft capital to build for the future in return. So in this scenario, the Bulls would trade Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Troy Brown Jr., the Bulls' first-round pick from the Blazers, and a future second-round pick. I know it sounds like a lot, and it is, but realistically speaking, you're going to need to give up a lot for someone like Wood for what he brings and with his contract. This would also give the Rockets young players in the form of Patrick, Kobe, and Troy Brown, and 2 draft picks, 1 first round and 1 second round. Like, that is a very attractive package if you're the Rockets. I know you guys are going to torch me in the comments on including Patrick Williams, but the fact of the matter is, if you're going to go all in, you're likely going to have to include him. And if you're bringing in a 4 who is going to be around longer than just a 1-year rental, that conflicts with Patrick Williams and his role for next season. Then finally, the other move, signing Kevin Love off of the buyout market to a veteran minimum deal for the remainder of the season. Now, all of this assumes that the Cavs and Love could even agree to a buyout, which, to be honest, is unlikely because it was said over the offseason that Kevin Love has no interest or desire to negotiate a buyout, which makes sense because why take money off the table from your contract that is guaranteed? Well, really the only reason a player does that is if they are not happy in their current role, they're on a losing team, and they want to go to a winning team for a chance to win a title for less money. And because the Cavs have so many big men right now with Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Lauri Markkanen, Kevin Love on that team at his age, 33 years old, just simply isn't a part of their long-term plan. And I just can't see them being able to trade Kevin Love with his massive contract before the trade deadline. He's still owed nearly $60 million for the remainder of his deal. So a buyout is much more likely of a scenario for Kevin Love. And listen, if you are able to get Love on a veteran minimum deal as a backup 4 behind Christian Wood, a guy who is actually having a pretty decent season, averaging 12-7 and shooting 41% from 3. He's leading the league in free throw percentage right now. He has one of the highest PERs that he's had for himself in his career for a while at over 21 player efficiency rating. You're talking about a guy who can provide more floor spacing, more rebounding, more size coming off the bench. And again, we always talk about the need for scoring off the bench. This would solve that as well as the size factor. So with the addition of Christian Wood, who would act as the starting power forward alongside Vucevic, DeRozan, Lavine, and Lonzo, the addition of Kevin Love as the backup 4, which is needed especially since Alizé isn't getting any playing time anyway, honestly, it's hard for me to see how this isn't a legitimate title contender with the pieces they already have in place, and now you add 2 bigs who can both play the power forward role and provide rebounding and floor spacing. Yes, defense still isn't going to be the best in the front court, but with the talent and scoring threats and the already existing perimeter defense, this team would be a force to reckon with in the league. I want to know what you guys think though. Do you even think that these moves would be possible or realistic? What do you think would make the most sense for the Bulls in doing an all-in move? Let me know in the comments, and guys, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.